He was Mr. Wonderful. A man with an incredible physique who stood across the ring from the immortal Hulk Hogan in the main event of the very first WrestleMania. He was an icon of the 1980s wrestling boom, a performer whose arrogance was matched only by his athleticism. His name was Paul Orndorff, and for a while, he had everything. The fame, the money, the sound of thousands of fans chanting his name, or cursing it. It didn't matter. As long as they were making noise, he was on top of the world, but behind the roar of the crowd and the glint of championship gold, a private war was being waged. A war against his own body and mind, all sparked by a single, devastating injury that he simply refused to let derail his career. It was a choice that would follow him, leading to a slow, painful decline and a tragic end he never deserved. This is the story of the breathtaking rise and heartbreaking fall of one of wrestling's most unforgettable stars, before he was Mr. Wonderful, Paul Parlett Orndorff Jr., born October 29, 1949, was just a tough kid from Brandon, Florida. Growing up without a consistent father figure, Orndorff found his identity on the streets and on the football field. He was a natural athlete, blessed with a rare combination of power, speed, and a fiery, competitive drive that often bordered on pure rage. He channeled that fire into football, becoming a local legend at Brandon High School under a coach who became the father figure he so desperately needed. His skill on the gridiron earned him a scholarship to the University of Tampa, where he starred as a fullback and tight end, scoring 21 touchdowns and piling up over 2,000 all-purpose yards. He seemed destined for a long career in the NFL. The New Orleans Saints even drafted him in the 12th round of the 1973 NFL Draft, but it just wasn't meant to be. Citing personal reasons and failed physicals, his pro football career ended after a short, unsuccessful stint with the Saints and a run with the Jacksonville Express in the short-lived World Football League. Disappointed with football, Orndorff found himself at a crossroads. Then one day, he was watching championship wrestling from Florida, and a light bulb went on. He saw these larger-than-life characters, the raw physicality, and the absolute devotion of the fans, and he saw a new path for himself. He wasn't a fan growing up, he actually thought it all looked fake. But the more he watched, the more intrigued he became. Through a family connection, he managed to get an introduction to the legendary Florida promoter Eddie Graham, who agreed to give the former football star a shot. What came next was a trial by fire. Orndorff was tossed into a small, sweltering gym with no windows and put through a brutal workout designed to break him. He was forced to do hundreds of Hindu squats, push-ups, and other drills until he was about to collapse. Then, he was put in the ring for 5-minute sessions with established pros like Bob Backlund, Jack Briscoe, and the man who would become his main trainer, the notoriously tough Hiro Matsuda. Matsuda was a sadist in the ring, a shooter known for his legitimate toughness and his cruel training methods. He's the guy who famously broke Hulk Hogan's leg on his first day just to see if he'd quit. Matsuda's job was to weed out the wannabes, to find out who had the heart to survive in the cutthroat world of pro wrestling. Most guys didn't last a day. But Orndorff wasn't like most guys. He had that killer instinct, forged on the football field and the streets of Brandon. The training was torturous. Matsuda would stretch him, choke him, and push him right to his absolute limit. But Orndorff just took it. He spent 9 months under Matsuda's thumb, 5 or 6 days a week, learning the craft, paying his dues, and proving he belonged. He later said it was the toughest thing he'd ever done, but he refused to quit. He used his own natural anger as fuel, matching Matsuda's intensity with his own. He didn't just survive the ordeal, he earned their respect. Eddie Graham was so impressed with a 15-minute match between Orndorff and Backlund that he started sending the tape to local high schools to promote his shows. Paul Orndorff had passed the test. He was officially a professional wrestler. In 1976, Paul Orndorff started his new career, kicking things off in the Memphis territory where he was almost immediately thrown into a feud with a young, local hero named Jerry, the King Lawler. It didn't take long for Orndorff to make his mark. On June 7, 1977, he pinned Lawler to win his first title, the NWA Southern Heavyweight Championship. It was the first of many belts he would hold as he traveled the grueling circuit of the National Wrestling Alliance. Promoters couldn't get enough of him. He had the chiseled physique of a bodybuilder, the explosive power of a football player, and a natural charisma that made fans either love him or hate his guts. He could be a heroic babyface or a despised heel, and he was incredible at both. He honed his craft in promotions all over the country, from NWA Tri-State, where he had a memorable rivalry with the Big Cat, Ernie Ladd, to the Mid-Atlantic Territory, where he teamed with Jimmy Superfly Snuka to capture the NWA World Tag Team Championship, Mid-Atlantic version. But it was in Bill Watts' Mid-South Wrestling promotion that Orndorff really started to become a main event star. The territory was famous for its gritty, realistic style, and it was the perfect place for Orndorff's intensity. Watts was a demanding boss who always pushed his guys to be better, and Orndorff thrived. It wasn't always a smooth ride, though. Early on, Watts was actually ready to fire him, telling him things just weren't working out. But he gave him one more day. That night, something clicked. Orndorff unleashed a fury in the ring, pulling off moves he didn't even know he could do. He proved his worth and went on to become one of the territory's biggest draws. Feuding with stars like the Junkyard Dog and Ted DiBiase, and winning the prestigious Mid-South North American Heavyweight Championship on July 4, 1981. His success kept rolling in Georgia Championship Wrestling, where he won the NWA National Heavyweight Championship 4 times. By now, he was a seasoned veteran, a proven draw, and one of the most respected wrestlers in the business. And then, in late 1983, he got the phone call that would change his life, and the entire course of wrestling history. Vincent K. McMahon was taking his World Wrestling Federation national, and he was scouting the best stars from the territories to build his new empire. Paul Orndorff was right at the top of his list. When Paul Orndorff came to the World Wrestling Federation in late 1983, he was immediately repackaged as the ultimate narcissistic heel. With his physique and arrogant attitude, he was born for the role. He'd strut to the ring, flex for the crowd, and sneer at the fans. The living embodiment of conceited perfection. It was around this time he was given the nickname that would stick with him forever, Mr. Wonderful. He was instantly pushed to the top, paired with the legendary Roddy Piper as his manager. The two of them were electric together. Piper was a master on the microphone, a verbal flamethrower who could get a crowd into a riot. Orndorff was the muscle, the handsome, chiseled enforcer who backed up every single one of Piper's words in the ring. Together, they became two of the most hated men in the WWF. Their main target was the phenomenon of Hulkamania. Hulk Hogan had just won the WWF Championship and was becoming a pop culture icon. His rock and wrestling connection with Cyndi Lauper was bringing wrestling to a whole new mainstream audience, and Vince McMahon needed powerful villains to go up against his all-American hero. Piper and Orndorff were the perfect antagonists. The feud boiled over through late 1984 and early 1985, becoming the central story leading up to McMahon's biggest gamble ever, a supercard event called WrestleMania. The build-up was incredible, playing out on MTV and national TV. At an event called The War to Settle the Score, Hogan defended his title against Piper. The match ended in chaos when Orndorff interfered, leading to a beatdown of Hogan. When celebrity Mr. T, who was in Hogan's corner, tried to step in, he got attacked too, with Piper even kicking Cyndi Lauper in the head, which generated unbelievable heat. The stage was set. The main event of the first-ever WrestleMania, broadcast from Madison Square Garden on March 31, 1985, would be a massive tag team match, Hulk Hogan and Mr. T versus Roddy Piper and Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff. The event was a spectacle like no one had ever seen, a mix of wrestling, music, and celebrity culture. With Muhammad Ali as a special guest referee, the atmosphere was absolutely electric. The match itself was a chaotic brawl that lived up to all the hype. In the end, interference from Piper and Orndorff's bodyguard, Cowboy Bob Orton, backfired. Orton, wearing a cast on his arm, climbed the ropes to hit Hogan, but Hogan moved, and Orton accidentally smashed Orndorff with the cast instead. Hogan seized the moment, pinned the dazed Mr. Wonderful, and got the win for his team. WrestleMania was a massive success, and Paul Orndorff was right at the center of it all. He had main event the show that launched the WWF into the stratosphere. But in wrestling, a loss, even in the main event, has consequences. In the weeks after, the story shifted. Piper and Orton started blaming Orndorff for the loss, turning on him and attacking him. This led to a surprising twist. When Piper and Orton were later ganging up on Hogan, Orndorff ran to the ring to even the odds, saving his old enemy. He turned his back on Piper and Orton, and just like that, the hated Mr. Wonderful became a beloved fan favorite. For a time, the team-up of Hogan and Orndorff was one of the hottest acts in the WWF. Fans loved seeing them fight side by side. But in the ego-driven world of pro wrestling, partnerships like that are often built on shaky ground. And as we've seen so many times, when two massive stars have to share the spotlight, it's usually just a matter of time before it all blows up. If you're enjoying this look back at one of wrestling's most iconic eras, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into wrestling history. You won't want to miss what happened next. The friendship between Hulk Hogan and Paul Orndorff was pretty much doomed from the start. Other villains in the company, especially adorable Adrian Adonis, started planting seeds of doubt. On his talk show segment, The Flower Shop, Adonis and manager Bobby Heenan started mockingly calling Orndorff Hulk Jr., playing on his insecurities and suggesting he was just living in Hogan's shadow. The mind games started to work. Orndorff, always the proud athlete, grew more and more frustrated. He felt he wasn't getting the same respect that Hogan was. The storyline played on this jealousy perfectly. The breaking point, at least on TV, was a simple phone call. Orndorff tried to get a hold of Hogan for backup, only to be told by someone that the Hulkster was too busy training to come to the phone. It was a small thing, but to Orndorff, it was the ultimate sign of disrespect. The tension simmered for weeks. Commentators and fans were all wondering when, not if, Orndorff would finally snap. It finally happened during a televised tag team match against the massive duo of Big John Studd and King Kong Bundy. During the match, Hogan accidentally knocked Orndorff off the ring apron. As Studd and Bundy ganged up on Hogan, Orndorff just stood on the floor, pretending he had an eye injury and refusing to help. Just when it looked like Hogan was done for, Orndorff jumped back in the ring and cleared house. He helped a grateful Hogan to his feet and raised his hand in solidarity, only to deliver a vicious clothesline, followed by his signature, devastating piledriver. The crowd was in absolute shock. Paul Orndorff had turned on Hulk Hogan, and in that one moment, he became the most hated man in wrestling. He hired Bobby Heenan as his new manager and, in a brilliant move, even started using Hogan's iconic Real American theme music as his own, which drove the fans insane. The feud that followed was a license to print money. Hogan vs. Orndorff was the hottest ticket in wrestling all through 1986. They sold out arenas from coast to coast, shattering attendance records. Their match at The Big Event in Toronto drew a crowd estimated between 64,000 and 76,000 fans, which just shows how much money was in their rivalry. The program was so successful that Pro Wrestling Illustrated named it Feud of the Year, and Orndorff himself won the award for Most Hated Wrestler of the Year. Orndorff was on top of the world. He was making more money than ever before and was part of the biggest storyline in the entire industry. But behind the scenes, a time bomb was ticking. During this career-defining run, Orndorff suffered a terrible injury. While some stories say it happened in the ring, most accounts point to a weightlifting accident where he tore a bicep and injured his neck. This was a career-threatening injury. The smart thing to do would have been to take a lot of time off for surgery and rehab. But Orndorff was in the middle of the most successful run of his life. The money was just too good, the spotlight too bright. In an era with very little medical oversight, the decision was his to make. And he made the fateful choice to just wrestle through the pain that he never got the surgery. He never properly healed. He kept wrestling night after night, his body screaming at him. The fans had no idea how bad it was, but they would soon see the effects. The injury led to nerve damage in his neck and back, which caused the muscles in his right arm and the entire right side of his upper body to start withering away. The feud with Hogan ended in a classic steel cage match on Saturday night's main event in late 1986. In a dramatic finish, both men looked like they escaped the cage and hit the floor at the exact same time. The match was restarted, and Hogan finally got the win, putting an end to their epic rivalry. For the fans, it was the end of a story. But for Paul Orndorff, it was the start of a long, slow, painful decline. The decision to wrestle through his injury had set him on a tragic path he could never fully escape. After the Hogan feud ended, Paul Orndorff was never quite the same. His body was breaking down. The atrophy in his right arm became more obvious, a visible reminder of the price he was paying. He was still a top-level guy, feuding with another physique master, ravishing Rick Rude, but that explosive power that defined his early career was starting to fade. By early 1988, the pain and the physical decline were just too much to ignore. At 39 years old, Paul Orndorff retired from wrestling. He left the spotlight and focused on running a bowling alley he owned in Fayetteville, Georgia. For a little while, it seemed like the story of Mr. Wonderful was over. Some newspapers even mistakenly reported that he had died, but a fighter like Paul Orndorff doesn't just stay down. The time away let his body recover a bit, and as a lifelong gym fanatic, he worked like crazy to rebuild his famous physique. Even though the atrophy in his right arm was permanent, he still looked to be in incredible shape. By 1990, the itch to get back in the ring was just too strong to ignore. He signed a contract with World Championship Wrestling, WCW, the WWF's main competitor. His return to the national stage saw him find a new kind of success. He wasn't the main eventer chasing the world title anymore, but he was a respected veteran and a key part of the WCW roster. He even won the WCW World Television Championship in 1993. He also had success in the tag team division, forming a team with Paul Roma called Pretty Wonderful, and they captured the WCW World Tag Team Championship twice in 1994. Even with this success, the old injuries were always there. The atrophy on his right side was a constant issue he had to work around every single night. By 1995, the condition had gotten so bad that he was forced to retire again. This time, he moved to a backstage role, working as a trainer and road agent for WCW. He became the head trainer at the infamous WCW Power Plant, a brutal training facility where he put a new generation of wrestlers through the same kind of tough conditioning he had gone through with Hiro Matsuda. He was known for his toughness and his no-nonsense style, teaching his students the value of hard work and respect. He made one last, ill-fated return to the ring in 2000. At the Fall Brawl pay-per-view, he was a mystery partner in a tag match. During the bout, while trying to hit his signature piledriver on a younger wrestler, Mark Jindrak, his body finally gave out on him. He fell, re-injuring his neck and suffering what was essentially a spinal cord injury. The match was stopped immediately. This time, there would be no comeback. Paul Orndorff's in-ring career was over for good. Paul Orndorff's life after wrestling was a series of quiet battles fought far away from the cameras and the crowds. He was a survivor. In 2011, he faced one of his toughest opponents ever, a diagnosis of throat cancer. At one point, his condition was described as critical, but in true Mr. Wonderful fashion, he fought back. After intense treatment, he announced in August of that year that he was cancer-free. His incredible career was also formally recognized. In 2005, he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, taking his rightful place among the legends of the business. He was inducted by his former manager, Bobby "The Brain" Heenan, and gave a speech that was emotional and intense, thanking the fans for both the love and the hate that had fueled his career, but the physical toll from his decades in football and wrestling was catching up to him in the worst way possible. The countless chair shots, the bone-jarring bumps, the piledrivers, and the untreated concussions that were just part of the job back then had done unseen damage. In his later years, Paul Orndorff began showing signs of a devastating neurological decline. In May of 2021, his son, Travis Orndorff, made a heartbreaking public announcement. His father was suffering from severe dementia. He posted a video of his father in a medical facility, looking confused and frail, a shadow of the powerful man he once was. Travis believed his father's condition was the result of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, the degenerative brain disease found in so many athletes who have suffered repeated head trauma. The videos were tough to watch and drew some criticism, but Travis explained that he felt he had no other choice. He claimed his father was being mistreated in the facility and posted the video to raise awareness and get him out. He spoke about the devastating reality of the disease, the memory loss, the confusion, and the loss of the man he knew as his father. This was the final, tragic chapter of Paul Orndorff's story. The Mr. Wonderful persona, the incredible physique, the intense competitor, all of it was being erased by an invisible enemy that had been hiding for decades. It's a tragically familiar story for wrestlers of his generation, who gave their bodies to the business in a time before the long-term dangers of concussions were really understood or even talked about. Orndorff was part of a class-action lawsuit against WWE in 2016, which alleged the company had hidden the risks of neurological injuries, although the suit was eventually dismissed. His son Travis later said that after looking at brain scans, doctors noted that his father's temporal lobe volume was smaller than what they'd expect even in an Alzheimer's patient, and that his brain showed extensive blood and fluid. The evidence seemed to point to a career of head trauma as a major factor. The man who once seemed invincible, who drew 70,000 people to see him fight Hulk Hogan, was now locked in a battle he simply could not win. The war was no longer in a wrestling ring, it was inside his own mind. On July 12, 2021, Paul, Mr. Wonderful, Orndorff passed away at the age of 71 after a very public battle with dementia. In a moving interview, his son Travis shared a final, tender moment with his father. Paul's right arm, which had suffered from severe weakness and atrophy for years due to his wrestling injuries, miraculously found the strength to grip his son, pull him close, and whisper, "Trav, I love you." They were his last conscious words. The wrestling world mourned the loss of a true original.